Real quick, I wanted to give some credit to this guy right over here, Let's Be Flashy, aka Digital Citizen. He is the person who introduced me to this idea. I've made some tweaks since, but the original idea was his. He is a moderator on the video game editing Reddit here. I definitely check him out, and he's a very good person right here as a mod. Alright guys, back to After Effects. So for those of you who know it, this is the Reshade homepage. As you can see here, I'm in the Call of Duty section. Now, a depth map uses the depth buffer. And as you can see here, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 only has partial depth buffer access, meaning that you can't really use the depth map. Most of the other Call of Duty games, including Advanced Warfare, have full depth buffer access. Fun fact. So, this tutorial really doesn't need to be for other Call of Duty games, because every other Call of Duty game anyone's ever going to edit ever has depth buffer access. We've got MW2 here, and MW3, there we go, and also my friend Lucky has a pretty great tool for that already, so you don't need to really use this version of Reshade. So let's get right into the tutorial. Hey guys, it's me, Nico here, coming at you with a tutorial on how to record depth maps in Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Now this is a feature that is kind of tedious to use, but it makes some effects a lot less painful to execute once you have your depth map recorded. So let's get straight into it. As you can see here, I'm here on Nuketown, and I have to record 3 different passes. So the first one would just be a draw gun 0 pass. So that we just record one of those, and then we'd want one with just the gun, which I'll get into later. But I want to go over how we're going to set up our depth path. So let's execute a config here. I'm going to attach this config in the description. I called it red depth because in Black Ops 2, red is your best case scenario. So let's send the config. You can see it doesn't look much like a depth map. Well, that's because we're going to be using the Denketsu fog mod as well. So let's open that up. Alright, and I will fast forward me putting in the settings so you don't have to sit through that. Alright, there we go. These are the settings. So why don't you go ahead and screenshot that, and I'll also stick a screenshot in the description just to be safe. And of course the config will also be in the description. So as you can see here, starting to look a little more like a depth map. Obviously it's red, not gray and white, but this will do the trick. So here's where I'd go ahead and record my depth pass, and that's all cool. And now I'll show you how to record the green screen pass. If you guys have been paying attention for long enough, you probably know this stuff already, but I'll just show it just in case. See, it's right there. It's public. Just go get it off the Twitter, okay? Don't bug me about it anymore, please. Thank you. Alright, so you'd want to record this. Obviously, you'd need to restart your game, or at least restart your demo between using the red depth config and the Denketsu prod config, just because this thing blacks out everything, and typing in commands is really, really tiresome. So, now that we're done recording everything, alright, so once we're in After Effects, let's go ahead and import our footage. Now, I've just saved mine right here in the fraps folder. I recorded them in 30 FPS just because it's a tutorial and it doesn't need to be 300 FPS VDUB'd and perfect. So let's pre-compose everything. Let's go with multiple compositions, and then just to be neat, let's make a new folder for the raw footage. Okay, so let's make a new composition, and I'm going to leave this in 1360 by 768, 60 FPS. Take us down to 30. There we go. Alright, so let's drag in our footage. Or misdragging in our footage. Okay, let's also cut it down here. Oops. Alright, so now we have all our footage in a comp. So on top here we have our green screen layer, then our depth map, which we're going to want to move to the bottom. And then we have our environment layer. So let's turn back on our green screen layer here and pull out Keylight. Okay, so a thing which lots of people don't really pay attention to in Keylight is it's not a one-click thing. You're not done. There are a few things you still have to do, so let's do them. So if you zoom in here, you can see we do indeed have a border. You don't want that, so we're going to modify the screen clip. And I think I'm going to go with, let's do 56 and 70, 67. That works. Looks pretty good. You'll still get a bit of missing green around the Dayglow site just because it is a green site. Nothing much you can do there. So let's continue here. Now, as you can see, the edges are a little rough, so we're going to want to pre-blur the screen by 1 pixel. That'll just put some of the detail back in there and make sure everything looks good. Once you are done keying out your gun, we can turn on the layer underneath it. Obviously, we're not going to want to key out the gun on this layer or any other thing which is green, because there's quite a bit of it. So let's get on to the depth map. So for the depth map, we'll want to pull out a few things here. So I actually prepared a preset ahead of time to show you guys how to do this. If you take a look here, that did not work so well. Hold on a second, I forgot one. Alright, put the tint above the levels. There we go, that's more like it. So pretty much what I did here was tint it so it's black and white instead of red. Then we stuck a levels on there just to crush the colors a whole bunch. Then we stuck a fast blur on there just to squeeze the sharpness out of the edges here. So this is how a depth map really should look. Now, what is a depth map? Well, it's a useful tool for people who want to create depth-based effects. Now, what is a good depth-based effect? Well, say we had a 3D object here which needs to be behind that fence. How are we going to get it behind the fence? Well, are we going to mask it? Probably not. That's not fun. Why would we want to mask it? So let's not mask it. Let's, instead of masking it, let's do it with the depth map. So let's create a new solid here. That's definitely how you spell element. There we go. And let's drag out an element 3D object. Excuse my element loading times. I have quite a large library of custom models and it doesn't appreciate it. Alright, let's just grab something basic here. Let's go to the starter packs and get something nice and visible. Let's get this. Alright, that's pretty obvious. I'm going to duplicate our layer here. We're going to drag it above element, and then we're going to make it a Luma Matte. Now you can see over here, if we zoom in, that this bottom part of the light bulb is less visible than the top part. So let's change that even more. So we can go over here to levels and put it on our map here. Now if we go into this levels, we can start to do things like that. Now it's now behind it. It was that simple. So if you take a look here, we pretty much just made it all black and white. And it's not always going to be that easy. Sometimes you're going to have a lot more pronounced colors which you need to change. Sometimes it's going to be very different, but in this case, because we had the light bulb behind the fence, it just saved us this mask. It's not perfect. There's no real recipe to it. It just makes masking a lot easier. So that's pretty much the tutorial. There are a few more things you can do, one of which I guess I will demonstrate real quick, which is depth of field. Obviously you can see this already has depth of field on it, but we can still do some cool effects. For example, if we take our depth of field here and we go to our comp there, we can actually go to the sharp zone. Now you can see with the radius at 0, everything is sharp, and as we turn it down, things become a lot less sharp. So let's turn up this up around 10, and then let's change our focal point. So we have here a pretty generic focal point. Everything out there is blurred. Everything in here is not. Your main goal when using your curves adjustment is you're going to want absolute colors. You're going to want an absolute white area and an absolute black area. It doesn't have to be this sharp. In fact, it could be a lot more like this. And as you can see, this would make it a little easier to get things closer to the camera. It's just that you end up losing your zone somehow, so you just want to make sure you're not too close, if that makes sense. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I'll be linking the stuff you need in the description, including the video game editing Reddit. I will see you guys in the next video.